Welcome to Fantastic Tones for Human Bones. My name is Robert Woods Ledoux. My co-host, Mark Pascucci Clifford, is here.
Hello.
Today, the guest is you. The audience. No.
I am.
It's me. I'm the guest.
Yeah, essentially you're the guest, but I'm... Yeah. Explain what we have in store. I'm essentially a student today. I'm learning along with everyone else. You're the guest lecturer.
Yeah, so what happened was this, is that we have an interview that will be coming out eventually. Probably we'll schedule these together somehow, with Sandy Perez. Sandy Perez is my teacher. He's a master percussionist from Matanzas, Cuba. And we had kind of a short, really kind of like it was a little bit of a noisy interview, like it was a noisy space. And we had kind of a short time with him. And there's so much to go over with Sandy, and I didn't want to get into the weeds about a lot of the basics of the style of music that he plays, which I've studied with him for a long time. And so I thought that it would be best to do a separate episode to go over some of the basics. Cover some basic concepts of Afro-Cuban folkloric music. So that is what we are here to do today.
Excellent.
So I'll start with a sort of a little overview of folkloric genres of music in Cuba. There's a Wikipedia article on the music of Cuba, and this article does not thoroughly cover the religious subgenres, which are the ones that I am chiefly interested in, and also the ones that happen to be most relevant for our interview with Sandy. But it does give a very good coverage of many styles that incorporate pitched instruments, which a lot of the religious music is simply drums and vocals. So that's something that I actually don't know very much about. So like if you go down the list there, it'll talk about even like, I don't even recognize the names of many of these things, but like danza, habanera, danzón, guaracha, zarzuela. I don't know what all this stuff is. Trova, son, like I couldn't really go over much of that stuff. But a lot of that music, if you I know it to have like it's often with guitars, pianos, bass, drum, like this, different types of melodic or harmonic supporting instruments. So the music that I'm going to chiefly talk about today is strictly drums and vocals. So, and that kind of gets broken out into two camps, secular music and religious music. For the secular music, we mainly have rumba and its various, like the subgenres of rumba, which sort of the primary subgenres you could say are guaguancó, yambu, and cumbia. And then you could also say guarapachanguero, rumba matancero, but those are similar to the others. And then bata rumba, which is kind of actually really important for Sandy because that's mostly what he does. Bata rumba. So I'll talk about those in a minute. Comparsa is...
and that came up a little bit where that's something that's like special to him, right? Is that right?
Yeah,
you were talking about...
Yes, it's special.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm going to play... Actually, I'll just get into it with these examples here.
So you want to focus on secular first and talk about rumba specifically first off?
Well, I'm just to avoid me just like reading this list that I have written and just having people be like, these are words. I'll play some examples of just
which
briefly.
They are.
Just so like, yeah, they are words. So there's secular and religious music. The secular music, rumba is more important, and bata rumba specifically, the subgenre of rumba, is very important. So So this first, I think we would call this subgenre rumba matancero, which is sort of like the older style of rumba.
Okay, and what typifies rumba?
Oh, okay. So, well, okay. So rumba is it's street music. People would say it's like a lot of the differentiations in some of these like subgenres can be something as vague as just like a tempo difference. Like some people would say tempo España is like a different subgenre, but it's literally like a difference in tempo that you're talking about. And a lot of it is just like the specific patterns that go onto the drums. So this music, I've heard a lot of different stories about where it comes from, but I think the for the most part, people would say it came from the dock workers in Matanzas that you used to play on the crates. And obviously, most of the lyrics to this music are in Spanish, but it draws heavily on all the religious genres and kind of pulls in things from all of that. You can kind of draw lines from different rhythms to be like, oh, like this drum part seems to be related to this drum part in this like religious music. For example, like the conga part, the tumbador part is very similar to a pattern that's in the yesa drum. But like, and I don't know specifically that it came from that, but it's, you can look at things like that. But anyway, let me play some examples here.
Cool.
So this is rumba matancero. So this is an older style of rumba. I'm going to keep these short. So just a couple, just like a minute. So just so you can kind of hear what I'm talking about. So this is one subgenre of rumba.
Okay.
Yo cantaré, cantaré para ti, niña. Cantaré, veré, veré, vini, na, 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 na. Cantaré.
Okay. And so, moving on from that, I want to just show a more slightly modern style of rumba. Okay, another short example, but people would call this wawanko.
Okay.
Yo me enteré que tú andas diciendo que eres un palo, mi amigo Julián. Oye, Julián. Yo me enteré.
All right, so it's very similar, and I think the untrained ear might not even be able to tell the difference in those. But those both classic rumbas from Matanzas, where Sandy's from.
Okay.
This is Colombia. So this is and this is a group from Havana. There's gonna always be for all this stuff. There's stylistic differences in the regions of Cuba. So Havana has different ways to play than Matanzas, than Guantanamo, than Santiago. Like they all have these regional differences in how they play.
Okay.
So this is a Colombia from a group in Havana. Okay. So
Cool.
one last example of well, okay, wait, I didn't do sorry, I didn't do Yambu. This is Yambu.
Okay.
Chévere, que chévere, que chévere. 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 Guaguanco. Chévere, que chévere, que chévere. Agonza. Chévere, que chévere, que chévere. Yambu. Chévere, que chévere, que chévere. Chévere, que chévere, que
And last quick example here. This is Warapachangeo, and this is from a recording from the people who invented this particular style, the Los Chinitos in Cuba, and they're outside of Havana, I believe. Anyway.
That is cool. That one's like kind of raw in a way.
Yeah. Well,
okay. So just as a
go ahead.
But just as a listener, I just want to, with I think the exception of, shoot, was it Wawanko? Probably not though. But I mean, but it sounds like there's always someone that's like slightly on a commentary or improvisatory singing role, and then oftentimes people will join in harmony and answer, right? So call and response vocally, and then Lord knows what's going on with the drums most of the time. But
so okay, a couple of key features that are that unite these as all being rumba. Song form is it's kind of similar to that of salsa in a way. So you have verses, which can be comprised of like various things. People will often, especially with I'm playing recordings of like rehearsed groups that are going into the studio. They've worked out all these harmony parts and things like this. Obviously, the more raw recording, it's just like a person singing, oftentimes, and then eventually they'll get to a set of choros, and that can they can go on from there. They can do more verses or cut it off. Like it's completely open. It's improvised music, So there's a repertoire of songs, folk songs that go with these styles, and a set of chorals that go with them. But you can kind of mix and match, and people do different ways. How they connect the dots, if you will. So that's kind of what, and kind of the fact that they'll be bringing in like little choros from Palo or the Lukumi religions or whatever. They kind of and reference those things on the drums, and that's kind of the beauty of rumba, is that you're painting a picture with your total experience of being a Cuban, or basically, and
interesting.
Yeah, it's really quite beautiful music. Some of the musical elements that kind of differentiate these styles, like Columbia's in 6/8. Most of the rest of them are in 16, like a duple subdivision versus a triple subdivision. So, there's other secular styles of music that I'm not really going to get that much into. Like comparsa is a festival style of music, and there's more than that. But like, that rumba is like the most relevant for our discussion of the folkloric genres. The religious music.
And wait, and can I ask real quick? I feel like I've been confused in the past where the terminology when people are getting together to practice is it having a rumba?
Well, I mean that word can can be synonymous with like having a party.
Right.
So, which, you know, I believe in Cuba, like people wouldn't necessarily practice. Like people would just get together to play. Like they're not rehearsing unless you're in one of these stable groups, like, or trying to begin a stable group, like the Muñequitos or, but people can just get together and play. It's like a Roomba can be very similar to a jazz jam, as we've spoken about before.
Having a jazz.
A jazz, yeah. So the religious music is different, obviously, or not. Well, I should say nothing is. I should say nothing is obvious here. Should take that perspective. Yeah. So all this stuff is always in the context of a ceremony, which there are different kinds, and but it's it's like church music. It's not performed typically outside of that context, unless you're in a folkloric group that's doing a presentation on this stuff, which is exactly the kind of group that Sandy was in, Afrocuban de Montanzas. If you look at that CD that we played in the interview, it's like, go down the list. It's like Bata Rumba, Yesa, Arara, whatever. It's just like a list of the different styles of folkloric and secular music that are played.
I see.
That he knows. So, so anyway, so to a kind of quick overview of the different styles or the different religions, I should say. Just to reiterate one thing that I said in the interview, where a lot of people believe that the religions that people often refer to as Santeria is like a mixture of a syncretization of all these different African religions with Catholicism. This is not true. Like, there is some element of syncretization of the different elements, but they are practiced strictly separately. And people will practice all of their religions distinctly, including Catholicism, perhaps. So so that they're not really there is some times where you can where crossover happens, but I'll get into that maybe in a bit, but for the most part that doesn't happen. So Regla de Ocha is really the only thing that can properly be called Santeria, which is a distinct religion. So it's the worship of saints. And that is perhaps the most popular religion for a variety of reasons, but it's also it's definitely the most popular one in America by a large stretch.
Like the American Cuban population, you mean?
Well, most of the people that practice this religion are usually, I find, from like Central America or Mexican people.
Okay. I see. So this is not necessarily.
I'm not sure why. Like, I mean, the Cuban American population in America is one of the largest groups of like Latinos in America, but I think in terms of my experience, like when I go out and I see a ceremony like in San Francisco or whatever, most of the people there are like Mexican people or, people from Central America.
Huh.
And I can't properly explain why that is, but that does seem to be the case. So anyway, Regla de Ocha, I mean, this is what, if you're at all familiar with any of this stuff, this is probably most likely what you've heard of. So, this religion has Bata, it has Wiro, which employ the Chekere, it has Yesa, and there's also Olokun drums, which are I'll get into those later, but those are all different different like drums and types of ceremonies that can be employed for this religion. There are other religions though, such as Arara, and there are different houses. I forget what there are three of them. Actually, wait, hold on. It's in this book right here, Mike Spiro's book. So Mike Spiro did a book about the Savalu house of Arara. I'm not going to find this in any short order, but anyway, there's a number of houses.
Yeah.
There's Abakwa is another religion. There's the Palo religion that is in like the Congolese tradition. And then people actually practice voodoo, particularly in the parts of Cuba that are close to Haiti. So the Haitian voodoo practice actually made its way onto that part of the Cuban island. So people practice a kind of voodoo there, which is its own kind of distinct thing. So, and there's more than that, but these are the main ones.
So anytime that I've done, which is extremely limited, but there's been a few times that you've given me a drum, and and in my mind, I'm like, we're doing Bata music. Is this all part of the ceremony that comes from Bata, the Regla de Ocho?
Yeah, Bata is basically strictly ceremonial.
And it's okay. Okay.
So
cool.
I mean, obviously,
we'll probably get into it, but like, I know that there's like a lot of different oratias that you were singing for, right? Like,
yeah. So all of these religions have certain things in common, like, or they have similarities in that they're usually like a pantheon of deities or saints. Regla de Ocho is actually interesting because it's actually, technically speaking, monotheistic. So it's similar to Catholicism if you think about Catholicism, the practice of praying to like Mary or praying to any saint for intercession. So that's effectively what's going on in Regla de Ocho, is you're praying to a saint. It's
is that
different.
What they do?
You're not praying for intercession necessarily. In Catholicism, you're praying to a saint to ask for something to God for you, right?
Yeah.
And in some sense that can happen, but there's many more things that can happen in that religion. It's
okay.
And I'm not gonna get too much into the religious stuff on the podcast.
Fair enough. Were we going to listen to any of these particular things, or did you want to get back to them as it pertains to Bata and to Sandy?
Yeah, I realize I probably well, let me just go through some of the samples so you can just get like a taste, just a tiny taste of it.
Okay.
And just so we can get some of the different kinds of sounds happening. And I'll do a little bit more explaining before I play each of these. So, first I'll play some Arara. So this is Afrocuban de Matanzas. For all I know, Sandy will be in this recording, but these are drums played with sticks. There's usually 3 or 4 drums played at a given time. It alternates. It has it can have a very complicated bell pattern, and like the Bata, this tradition comes with a lot of rhythms.
Okay.
So, so here's a quick sample of what that sounds like. Okay, that was not Grupo Afrocuban de Matanzas. My bad. But nonetheless. Okay, really quick. this is what abakwa sounds like. This is as far as I know, not allowed to be practiced outside of the island of Cuba. So it has almost zero. I don't know anyone who practices this in America. So this is what the music sounds like. All right.
Was it the lag, or is there a lot of like kind of micro fluctuation going on in that rhythmically? That was cool.
Yeah, the abakwa, the rhythms are cool. So I should have mentioned that's 4 drums played with the hands. And they're usually like the drums are held under the left arm and played with the right hand. So they're all kind of one-handed parts.
Yeah.
And the rhythms, because of the way the drums are, they're always kind of low, so it kind of turns into this like rumbly thing where it's hard to kind of track what drum is doing what. It's pretty cool. And the other thing I was going to mention, if you really get into this stuff and you start learning all these songs, there's distinct differences in the language. Like if you present to me a song that I've never heard before, I would be able to tell you, oh, this is a Lukumi song. This goes with Regla de Ocha. Or like, this is an Arara language song. Or this is a Congolese Palo language song. Like, you can tell how, like, what it belongs to. Which is basically tracking it back to country of origin, almost, in West Africa. So here's some of the...
Interesting. Okay.
Here's some of the Regla de Ocha stuff. So this is Yesa. These drums are played with sticks, 4 drums, and two bell parts.
Okay.
This is a Wiro. Wiro is the name of the ceremony that is played with shekere. This is Cusito from Rumbero de Cuba and Abilona.
How many shekere typically in one of those, in that ceremony, or in a typical weiro ceremony?
Typically 3. And 1 conga, and then the wataka, which is a hoe blade.
Oh wow, that's what that was.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
There's also a ceremony which I don't have a sample here with it's called bembe, where people also typically use. I mean, people typically use a hoe blade for a lot, but that's the sound that you would normally hear in a bembe or a wiro for the bell pattern. So this is some bata. This is part of the oro seco. The 2 traditions that have this part of the ceremony where they play to the throne of the Orisha without any singing. They play a long sequence with the drums by themselves. Arara and bata both do this. So this is bata.
Okay.
And like Arara Bata has many rhythms that
Yeah.
that are part of the repertoire. Some of these other things like Yesa, there are like a few rhythms, but like there's many rhythms for Bata. So I was gonna play. This is Palo, which is part of like the Congolese practice.
Okay.
All right. All right. So one last brief example here is a thing called misa. So this is a cajon, which is incorporates songs that are basically Catholic or Christian over the top of rumba. That's kind of a funny example because they're talking about Babalueye, which is a Lukumi. God, there's a fair amount of synchronization that happens in that particular religious practice.
Can I ask a question about the Bantu and the Congo, the Palo that we just listened to?
Yeah. That was actually Sandy playing. I forgot about that.
Oh, crazy. Is that bell pattern from Congo originally?
I don't know. I mean, if that's one of the things that's kind of like throughout Africa, the 12/8, 6/8 bell pattern.
Yeah,
you find it everywhere, and you'll find it in all of the music of Cuba, basically. And that's a great segue to our next topic, which is going to be clave. So, okay, so that's just a kind of a brief taste of the different styles, and I know you might be thinking these all sound the same, but the differences between those are actually like crucial to understanding like the music of bata rumba, like what Sandy's doing, because what he's doing is like putting like taking ideas from this and that and putting it together. So
yeah.
So that's kind of like a taste of like just the palette of stuff that we're working with. And it's terrible that we're listening to such short samples but like to really listen to some of this stuff, like some of these recordings, like the entire thing will be like 20 minutes long, which...
Would it be possible to assemble a playlist?
Yeah. Well, kind of. I mean, it's honestly like there's not many recordings of this that exist, but yes. But it's like if you were looking for a Spotify playlist, like half the things that I just played, you wouldn't be on it.
What about like a Mixcloud kind of thing, or you know what I mean? But
I mean, I don't know. Like we could figure it out. I could I could put
Okay,
together
okay.
something. But that is part of the like the I mean, yeah, there's just not many public popular recordings of this stuff. All right, so clave is like let's get into clave because this might take a little bit. I
Yeah.
have prepared for you because you asked in their interview, are there different types of clave?
Well, yeah, and
And
this, I mean, I had a, what in my mind was a valid reason, because
no, it's a decent question because I think that this gets explained a little funny a lot of the time.
Sandy said it's infinite. if I
well, yeah.
if I
So what he
understood
said
him
was
correctly.
like he said the most popular clave is rumba clave, which but he said like you can make up whatever your own clave however you want, like sky's the limit.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean,
All right.
what he said, and that's true, of course, and I think what he said when he said rumba clave is the most popular clave, it's also like the closest, it's like the most relevant clave to understanding the concept,
Okay.
which is important. So what I want to get at, so clave is a musical instrument, a specific rhythm, and then a generic musical concept.
Okay.
So the musical instrument is like two sticks that you hit together. I have some right here. They sound like this. And so there's a number of rhythms that you could consider to be clave. In fact, and I've put a bunch of them together here in a recording. And I just play, I think, a couple bars of each, or as long as the pattern lasts. So I'll just play this and then we'll talk about it. How's that?
Sounds good.
La rumba clave. 1, 2, 3, 4. At a slower tempo, rumba clave with a 16th note subdivision. 1, 2, 3, 4. Rumba Columbia with a triplet subdivision. 1, 2, 3, 4. Rumba Yambu with a 16th note subdivision. 1, 2, 3, 4. Rumba Columbia with a triplet subdivision. 1, 2, 3, 4. Son clave played in 2/3. 1, 2, 3, 4. The bell pattern for bembe. 1, 2, 3, 4. Variation on the bell pattern for bembe. 1, 2, 3, 4. Bell pattern for Paulo. 1, 2, 3, 4. One variation on a common bell pattern for Arara. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. So those are
Cool.
all kind of like examples of how clave is played explicitly in these different styles.
Yeah, and just for me growing up, I mean, when you played son clave 2 3, I feel like that's like the first clave that a lot of Americans hear. You know what I mean? And that's sort of, I wanted to sort of crack that open with Sandy a little bit, but I don't think it was
No, it's
was
totally fine. We're going to get into it. Like, we'll
Okay.
get into it immediately, in fact. So,
we are into it.
yeah. So, okay. One of the things that is important about understanding the musical concept of clave is that in the context of it's interesting because like in the context of a lot of these folkloric styles that I'm discussing, the clave simply continues. It doesn't change. The context of where you're feeling the sense of downbeat can be different, and also it doesn't matter. Like, doesn't matter where you feel the downbeat, but where the song goes is specific and is unchanging. So if you're moving from one song to the other and you can leave space, chop something off, or like as long as the clave doesn't change and the song is in the right place, you're good to go.
Now, when you were first learning about this, was this a difficult thing for you to wrap your head around? Because it's quite different from.
Well, it's difficult to learn all of the like where it goes because let me see if I can a couple of examples off the top of my head. So like
Okay.
Here's some Yesa songs for Ochun.
Mm-hmm.
So ye kare apembere ni moro. Ye kare apembere ni moro. I forget. But that song to me feels on the downbeat of clave. So it would be like 1, 2, 3, 4, something like that. It's highly syncopated, obviously, so it's a little tricky. But
Yeah.
another song might be Wala mi lao chiche, ye ma de ala fomo de wala mi lao de, wala mi lao chiche, ye ma de oro fomo de wala mi lao de. So that's really, it's like clearly on the way it's structured, way the phrase starts and ends, makes it feel like the two side of the clave is the downbeat. To me.
Yeah. Okay. I see what you're saying.
So to learn like where that happens in the music, is time consuming and it can be tricky. There is a logic to it though that transcends this music and goes like you can hear it in salsa and all of the other popular styles of music. And the thing is when you get into that type of music and you're dealing with instruments that have chords to play, like the chords are really dictating like where you think the downbeat is.
Yeah.
And so like because in this music it doesn't matter where you think the downbeat is. Like you can think it's on beat 2. Like it doesn't matter. Like it doesn't affect the music. Like as long as you know how the parts go and how they go together. But in salsa, like it is I mean, there's dances that go with all this music as well, which is another thing I should mention. Like, none of this music,
everything that we've talked about so far.
everything that we've talked about so far, a critical piece of it is dancing, and there's basically no situation where like you would have this music with no dancing. It's like it's a critical part of the experience. So let me just pull in one example of a salsa song here. That's one of my personal favorites. So what can be common in salsa music, which is like a flip from 3-2 to 2-3 when it goes to the coro. So like the form of salsa, you typically have like a verse, maybe you have like a verse, and like it's interesting because it's something like a sub chorus you might have. So like it's verse verse chorus, and then there's like the real coro parts that come after that, and like the munya and the all of that, the end part of the song. And like the beginning part of the song, which is like more chill, can be a 3-2, and then the rest of it can be in 2-3. Now, so this music, the clave is not always explicitly played, or at least it can be very difficult to hear depending on how it's mixed, because you can't necessarily hear exactly the rhythms that the percussion are playing if it's like kind of buried. And but you can always get the clave from what the like in a good band, you can get it from what's going on elsewhere, the horn parts, the vocal lines, the piano parts, and sort of
they're
like
all going to mirror it and reflect it in a way.
Yeah, so like I like to think about rumba clave, but usually people would associate salsa with son clave, which is just moving one note over by a 16th note. This is such an inconsequential move to me. It's like, in fact, actually, good story. I saw this lady singing a song. It's like a video of a lady singing a song, and she was playing this along to it. She was going 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, I don't know what you call that, but it's basically a combination of rumba and son clave together.
Weird.
But that really tied the room together for me, because it's like, what is that most similar to? It's most similar to the bell pattern in 6/8, right? It's just with the 16th note subdivision.
Okay. Yeah. Crazy.
So that like double note part that is the difference. That's the difference between rumba and son clave, and it's like it's inconsequential to the concept of clave, because the concept still works the same. So like the key notes of clave, the ones that are like the most important in like the alignment of where you feel the beat, is there's a note called the bombo note, which is like, if you're starting from the downbeat of clave, it's the second note. So 1, 2, 3, 4, boom, boom.
Yeah.
So
that's called the
when
bombo
you hear
note.
Yeah, people call it the bombo. So some people
Bombo.
like you'll hear like when you hear the accent there. I mean, you can hear the accent on the other side of the clave there as well. But that usually is can be an indicator of where clave is. The other indicator is like the downbeat that's in between the 3 side and the 2 side. So here.
Yeah.
Here. So a lot of times the piano part will be found there. You'll have, obviously, like with the clave and that missing note, it's like ... So the horn parts you'll hear there as well.
Okay.
All right. So this song, this is Vete Pregona by Jose Alberto El Canario. He's one of my favorite. I love this album to death. I listen to the crap out of it. I think it's great. But
Okay.
it's great at it's really great at illustrating, to me at least, like how clave is works in this music, because usually the horn parts are outlining it. So listen to the horns, listen to how the vocal melody rhythmically aligns to the clave, and then listen to how it changes once we get to the choro parts. It goes into, it's really more funky when it's on the 3 side, and then when it gets onto the 2 side, you'll feel it. It's a kind of like a relaxation almost of the groove, which is perfect for like everyone to kind of start dancing and stuff.
Okay.
So what else? There was one more thing I wanted to say about this. Oh yeah, the chord progression. The chord progression is what defines where, whereas in the music that just has drums and percussion, you don't have a chord progression. So it's just wherever you think the beat is fine. It doesn't matter. But the chord progression really solidifies this, because we have a home bass, we have a tonic, we have tonic and dominant chords, because these progressions aren't that complicated. They're Western harmony progressions, so they always resolve back to a place, and that place is where we feel the downbeat.
Okay.
So this is Western harmony getting mixed up with African rhythms, if you will.
No, it makes sense. Cool. What's choro again? When you said when we get to the choro, it flips
That's
from
like
3
when
to...
I'll show you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Vete y pregona por ahí que yo acabé. Pero vete y pregona por ahí que yo acabé. Que a mi lado fue tu vida peor que el vinagre con miel. Que a mi lado una mentira, que conmigo se perdió tu corazón. El que te ponga atención te dirá: mentira mulata, yo lo conocí y sé que no fue así. Mentira mulata, las cosas no fueron así. Las cosas no fueron así. Las cosas no fueron así, mulata. Mentira, mulata, las cosas no fueron así. Tantas cosas que te di y te pones a decir de mí por ahí. Mentira, mulata, las cosas no fueron así. La mujer que yo creí perfecta, antes de medianoche se quitó la careta. Mentira, mulata, las cosas no fueron así. Me confundiste con mentira, justo a mí me lo decía que tuviera cuidado. Mira, mulata, las cosas no fueron así. Ayer dijiste que hoy es cuando a mí me dé la gana, mulata. Mira, mulata, ¡tachito!
So, did you feel that switch when it happened?
Well, I felt the switch in that I could, like, things settled for me personally, you know, in the first section, because you were demonstrating the clave to me while it was happening, but that it was hard for me to hear it. you know, it was hard to feel it. In the second half, it was much easier for me.
Okay, let me zero in on a couple of points that in that case.
Okay.
Because yeah, I mean, I agree it is harder to hear it, and it's like much easier to hear it once they get to that 2-3. So let me start. I'll start and stop it when we have.
Vete y pregona por ahí que yo acabé. Pero vete y pregona por ahí.
That part right there is like like if you were totally confused otherwise, like da da da, they're just playing the first part of clave right there.
I see. Okay.
Pero vete y pregona por ahí que yo acabé.
So yeah, and it continues.
Okay. Interesting.
Like a lot of these hits start on the bombo note. So if you like, particularly after the vocals start, the horn hits are hitting on the bombo, and they also hit on the other side, but you can hear it like that's usually where they're gonna start.
Vete y pregona por ahí.
So that's the second half of the Yambu clave. Da 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 da.
Vete y pregona por ahí que yo acabé.
That one is
Mm-hmm.
the big fat hit on the bombo note there. But anyway, this is the type of stuff that like once your ear gets accustomed to hearing this, it's like you can't unhear it. It's like riding a bike, you know?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. What is the name of that band again?
The singer is Jose Alberto.
Okay.
They call him El
good,
Canario, the canary, because he like whistles crazy. Yeah, they're super tight, crazy good band and beautiful arrangements.
Yeah, totally. That sounded amazing. Good Lord.
Cool. Yeah, I would highly recommend. The album that this is from is called Herido, Heartbreak, and it's really worth just spinning it. It's so solid. It's great. Great album.
Just hanging out with it.
Yeah. Okay. I want to talk about some other. Do you feel like you understand clave? Can we move on from clave?
I feel good.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, no, honestly, that clarifies a lot. And I really like the breakdown that clave equals 1, a musical instrument, 2, a specific rhythm, which there are multiple of, and 3, a generic musical concept. So
yeah, and you can sort of like I've heard some people would say like everything has a clave, like, and like that's obviously like we know about wolf eyes, but and like music like that, which probably is like clave is not really relevant to a band like Wolf Eyes or like Ionis Xenakis. Like what, I don't know how to put a clave on that music, but for most music, there is like even like random music, like from anywhere in the world. What clave really represents is a binary breakup of like on the beat, off the beat.
I see.
And it can go like almost on any music, and it's handled differently. Like for example, so there's a lot of the traditions in Cuba are mirrored in Brazil in the candomblé tradition. And I forget what they're all called down there. But one of the things that always struck me as being interesting there is like when the way that they deal with clave often is like, if you're singing a song that's and the song goes with the clave in a certain way, you can just start singing a new song and adjust the clave to match the song. So in essence, you're changing the music to suit whatever vocal part, but that's an absolute 100% no-no in the music of Cuba. Like the clave continues, the song adjusts to match with it. So it's thought about in the same way. It's just like the management of how you get to the alignment that it's supposed to be is handled differently.
Yeah, that's interesting. And if you're handed the clave, unless something's called, you're just going to be you're steady, you're pat, right? Like in any of the traditions or music that we've talked about so far, if you are the clave player, you're just hanging until something else is called, right? You're not. There's not really any improvisatory element to it, and it's just your job to hold it down. Right?
Yeah. Yes. Usually, in most cases, there are some interesting exceptions here and there, but yes, like
okay,
yes, just keep the clave going. Yes, that's definitely the job. They'll say, clave is the key or clave is the time. It's literally a reflection of the tempo. It's like, I would like in American music, we have the backbeat. The backbeat exists in almost all music genres in America.
Right.
It's literally everywhere. Clave is like Cuba's backbeat, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, some other kind of musical concepts of folkloric instruments or the folkloric genres. So this is something that I think intrigues me particularly about the bata repertoire. But this is true of basically all of the music. So the modular nature of the music. So it's a lot like, and this applies on a macro structure and a microstructure. So I think rumba has the most complicated form of this on the micro level, and probably bata drumming would be on the macro level. So
the most complex.
Yeah. So, but they all kind of have elements of both. So, and what I mean by that is, so I like to think about it. It's actually, it compares a lot to me as like a vinyasa yoga sequence. Like,
oh, interesting.
Like if you're doing a yoga practice for yourself, unless you're doing one of those kinds of practices where it's always the same, you're going to maybe have a peak form or whatever. So you're having, let's say, I'm not very good at this, but like you have like you want to do this pose. And so you're going to work towards that. There's a bunch of stuff you kind of always start with, and like you get your body ready, you work towards this. Maybe the goal of your day is to loosen your hips or something like this,
Yeah.
And so you have poses and different things that you work towards that, and you do your goal, and then you kind of come out of it and you finish your practice. And you can basically put whatever you want in there, more or less, but you have a kind of goal, and like the things that you do kind of connect to one another in a logical way. The music of like bata is actually very similar to that, how it's structured in a sense, like, because there's like a way that you start. You can start from different places. These things connect to other sets of things. You can choose your own adventure a little bit. There's maybe something specific you have to do definitely, depending on the circumstances or like what's going on. When you can get to it in different ways, you can come out of it in different ways. You can extend it or keep it short. Like it's so in this way, like the repertoire of the music can come in these little chunks, and you connect them together, and that actually has its own beauty, I believe, of like how, like what makes the music beautiful. Like I like to listen a lot to these ceremonies and stuff, and they'll be like people playing for 20-40 minutes or something like this, like really long recordings. And it's like, but like how it gets from one place to another is really actually magnificent for these people that have been doing this their entire lives, because
I see. Yeah.
they do this all the time, every day. And like, and it's, once you understand these different intricacies and the rules, when you have someone do something that's very clever, it's very beautiful in the music. It's like exciting or whatever. And so that's a kind of like a more macro structure thing. But there's also microstructures, and that like micro modular structures, and that like in Bata there's a lot of call and response. I mean, all of this music is very call and response, but there's very small elements of call and response. Like Iya does this, plays a note in this particular spot. It's kind of like an if then. It's like, if I play this note, then you respond this way.
Right.
However, if I play it this way, you do this other thing. Like, or it's like, if we do this, we go into this part, or we come out of this part, or we stay here. Like, and it's all this kind of instruction coming from the Iya.
Yeah. So, I mean, on that note, can you describe the actual names of the drums used in Bata?
Right. So, good point. I don't want to like read this whole list, but
no, that's fine. But I mean, I think specifically for Bata, it'd be valuable.
Yeah. So a lot of the drums of these different traditions have specific names. So it's not just high, middle, low drum. So like the Bata is a set of 3 drums that are played across the lap. The highest one is named Onkonkolo, the middle drum is named Itotole, and the large drum is named Iya or Iyalu. And then the shaker that's used in that context is called the Achere. And then like in just to give another example, in Rumba, you have the quinto is like the highest drum, the improvising drum. The middle drum is called the segundo, and the lowest drum is called the conga or the tumbador. And then you can have cajon. The people will play on bamboo with sticks that can be called the kata or the palitos. Sometimes people play on a wood block to mimic the sound of playing on bamboo. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the clave. And then all the other traditions, there's like Arara has the wewe, the aplati, the yano, the yanofo, okloto. Like,
okay,
this is like other names of drums for the other things as well. So like what I was just talking about was Bata specific. I'm mostly a Bata nerd, so a lot of the examples that I'll mention will be Bata related, but or Rumba related. So Iya is the leader drum in that context, which is the biggest drum, and makes a lot of the calls. And Bata has the most material, where there are specific call and responses. Like, if I play this note in this particular spot, you have to play this exact response, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's so wild.
So, but the other traditions also have this dynamic, just without the rote, like the specific material. So like in Rumba, it's basically free improv, more or less. But it's like, if you play something, you can like kind of have the option of responding like in a similar way to as you would if it were Bata, but it's a different context, obviously. So so like
because in Bata, like a lot of times Iya is calling for everyone to make specific changes too, right? Where in Rumba, I don't know if that's always the case. Like if an entire groove shift or something like that is going to happen based on one call.
Well, but the difference between one of the differences between bata and rumba is that bata has a lot of material and rumba doesn't. So like a lot of the
Okay.
subgenres of rumba are simply one groove that is maintained throughout. So it's so like there isn't going to be a mass shift ever because that doesn't exist in that genre. You know what I mean?
I see. Yeah, yeah.
Unless you're doing like an arrangement with a group, which you'll hear like on a CD, you know? So, but it's important to note that like the communication, the micro communication between the drums, which can be improvised. It's either improvised with, specific material or improvised material, depending on the context and the genre. But it exists across the board.
Right. Okay.
So another thing that's very relevant to what we were just talking about is so there's interaction between all of the parties involved. That includes the dancer. There's always a dancer. Like in rumba, there's a dancer. In bata, in like a bata ceremony, there's a dancer. Palo, there's dancing. And like what the dancers are doing influences what the leader drum is doing. What the lead singer is doing influences what the leader's drum. Like all of this stuff interacts with one another, and like how everyone plays together, sort of they create the music together. And this is like, this is something that's not really the same as, I mean, there are parallels to music like jazz or bluegrass or something where you're improvising together.
Yeah.
But it's different, I think, mostly because in those contexts, everyone's playing their own instrument worlds. So like if you think about a jazz trio, like you can have these very micro call and response things that can happen. Like it's there for people to do, obviously. And like,
right.
like someone could be playing a solo and the bass player could kind of like mimic a lick that is being played or whatever. But that's not the kind of bass way of operating, because the bass is fulfilling a role that is like the bass part, and the drums play the drum part. So like they kind of keep the groove going in this way. The piano is maybe comping or playing a solo or whatever. It's like there's different roles that like don't cross over to one another.
Yeah.
Whereas when you have three drums or like like they're together, they're musically operating in the same space.
I see. Yeah, and okay, musically, well, sonically too.
Yeah.
You talking about what you were just saying did bring to mind some examples of some modern groups who have really developed their own, like Knee Body especially, it's developed its own cueing system, language where they can all take leadership of what's happening within the group context just through musical cues, and they've memorized like 120 of them or something that they all know. But
yeah, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of like interesting examples like that, like even Jordan's music, or like,
oh, totally.
Where there's like, and I explored this a little bit with dancing to try to like codify like that dance piece that we did where it was like, okay, the dancers do this move, that means that we have to play this music, but it also cues other dancers to do other dance moves, and like this kind of like this set of nested relationships that can happen, which I think is really fascinating. But all that stuff's built into all this music, all this Cuban music. So it's like, it's already there. It's really great, amazing music.
Totally.
So, another thing that's very interesting about this music is how it's learned and how it's taught is rote teaching. And you could, notate all this stuff, and that may aid in you memorizing a bunch of stuff quickly. But like, for example, I don't know, maybe it's just my naive experience as a person that's only been playing for like 15 years or something. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
but like, but like,
man.
basically, like if you are messing around and like playing with different people, it's like whoever you sit down, like if you sit down in a bata session and you're playing the totale and there's someone new on the kaha, the leader drum, like everything you know is basically out the window. You could have memorized everything so like forever, but like and got it perfectly, but like you have to be able to sit there and like respond on the fly to and learn a new thing like right away and like while it's happening.
That's so cool.
And new songs, like so everyone's got like different songs that they sing and different ways that they sing them. People will be like, people will put songs in different parts of the clave sometimes, or like extend them in different ways. And
oh my god, they put them in different parts of the clave too.
So I mean,
So,
some
like,
that's not super common, but that there's definitely like people will have like there'll be something little that can really throw you off if you're like not ready to adapt what you've memorized
Right.
to like this new scenario. And that's the real chop of this music. It's not memorizing all this stuff. It's being able to being so familiar with the repertoire that you're like, oh, I get the idea. I can go along with this.
Interesting. Yeah. And is there even like subtle different approaches to these standardized rhythms from person to person and group to group? Or is it pretty consistent? Like if you're, this one has triplet subdivision, Iya does this, like or are there people who will deviate to enough of a degree where you're like trying to fit in with like their own feeling of the subdivision as well?
I think so. Like, you're asking about difference of subdivision specifically.
Well, that's the one that would come up like essentially
because that can happen
if you adjust the swing. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
if they were,
that can happen.
Okay.
So like for example, that happens sort of like a common rhythm that a lot of people kind of play it a little bit differently. Is this rhythm that they sing arara songs to in the bata repertoire. So some people play this in like not very many people, but some people play in like a straight 12/8. Or sorry, that's like hard for me to even think about it like this, but like it's like the overall rhythm is like ding ga ding 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 ga ding 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 ga ding ding ding. Some people play that in like a pulled out 12/8. So the second triplet of that note is like pulled out a little bit, so it's like ding ga ding 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 ga ding 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 ga ding ding ding. And then some people play it straight 8, like ding ga ding 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 ga ding ding ding, like that. And so that's like everywhere in between. So like whoever you sit down with, you just have to be prepared for what kind of like what the groove is that they want. I mean, and vice versa too. Like even if you sit down on Iya, like you're gonna have to adapt maybe to what the people around you know how to do.
Totally. Okay. That makes sense.
And in rumba, that's kind of like that's also Roomba's like the wildest genre to sit down with new people at, because everyone kind of plays. There's so many ways to sort of play Roomba, and people like different things about it. Like Sandy likes you to kind of keep a very consistent pattern and leave a lot of space that he, of course, will fill up. But like, like some people kind of like play a lot of groove that's like really kind of got a how should we say, really swung feel, kind of like a Brazilian samba, where it's like a more the 16th notes are pulled to the edges a little bit.
Yeah. That's fascinating to me. Like whenever I hear anything like that, because that happens more and more now, especially with hi-hat patterns that have come, evolved in jazz and hip hop, like especially after producers like JD, like Dilla, influenced a lot of people to do like the quote unquote drunk style, and that's so that kind of pulling of triplets and sixteenths is much more prevalent now. But when I've heard it in the context of bata or anything else, when I've been around you when that's going on, it's really fascinating to me, because like sometimes like it feels like it's pulled so much in one way or another that it's just like become a different subdivision,
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty extreme in some cases, some specific cases, but yeah, there's a lot of flexibility in terms of like getting between 16th notes to triplets, like in a lot of this music.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, the tempo doesn't fluctuate. Like the time, like even the way people play clave, it can be like a little bit more straight, a little bit more swung. I saw there was once that someone, so rumba, a rumba tune will typically start out with the person playing clave first. That's super common. So the first thing that happens is the person plays clave, kata comes in, the tumbadores come in, and then it's off, and then you're playing. So, but you can go through Roomba recordings and grab all those initial claves and compare them. So someone did that and like did a theoretical analysis comparing like all these Roomba groups, all the different claves, how it starts.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And
that's
like,
cool.
And like being like, okay, this note's pulled a little bit here for this band or this person, and like this person's playing clave here. And it's like really detailed analysis. And it's like, it's funny because like you get to the end of it and it's like, yeah, it's a little different for everyone. You learned nothing basically. Like,
well, you learned that.
Yeah. And some people swing it a little harder. Some people swing. It's just like the ride pattern in jazz. It's like some people swing it a little harder. Some people swing it a little straighter. It doesn't really make a difference. It's like,
Yeah, totally. Wow. All right. Cool.
Yeah. So just one more thing about rote teaching and like how that a lot of the parts of these drums are actually almost, I mean, I don't know if this is by design or not, but who designed this? I have no idea, but it's like the collective consciousness of humanity designed this over time, right? So it's like,
yeah.
There are drums that are easier to play and drums that are like more advanced to play. So like when you're starting, there's a place for you to go. It's learn this particular drum first, then graduate and learn this drum. And it's not always the same idea for a lot of these genres, but it can be that way.
Right.
And so yeah.
Like, bata is at the Onkonkolo?
Yes.
Okay, and that's the one that I've played 2 or 3 times. Just kind of very patterns that are relatively simple and the least amount of call and response interaction, I think.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So it's like it's easier to learn. You can play for a while without having to like, and like they're easy enough so that you can pay attention to what's going on and learn eventually and graduate to the other drum.
Totally.
So that the repertoire has this functionality of rote teaching built into it, which is amazing. It's brilliant, right? It's like, could you design a better idea?
I mean, it just seems like it's a really natural result of it being rote and folkloric over time, and like this is how you're gonna bring in youngsters,
Yes,
like it.
Exactly.
That's super cool. I haven't thought about that aspect of oral passed down traditions and people taking them on. That pattern itself must be seen in many other places, in many other ways. That's really cool to think about.
Yeah. So I just wanted to talk briefly about improvisation in Roomba.
Yes, please do.
So
Roomba confuses me so horribly, man. So yes.
So like a good easy way to think about it is that like you are creating a melody between all the drums. And so it's like you are trying not to step on each other's toes, and there's always like a place for each drum, and they don't touch each other. So like there's basic patterns, and then there's like basic kind of ideas of how you improvise. Again, it's improvised music, so you can play whatever you want, but it's like in the same way that jazz is improvised music, like you can play whatever you want, but like there's things that make it sound jazzy and and there's things that you could play that would like you would get kicked out of the band for doing, right? Like
I think yes.
so like so yeah, and I meant to bring this up on the interview with Sandy, but like I've seen him do this before. So like he has these recordings of Los Muñequitos completely memorized. He can play any of the drum parts and like sing all the songs completely along to these recordings of it. And it's kind of crazy, but
well, I mean that aspect did come up because it we talked about the fact that he like did Roomba himself, like he recorded entire Roomba tracks multi-tracking, which to me was mind-blowing, because how are you going to do like an improvising shifting group as one human unless you're able to keep track of everything?
So yeah, and that's kind of why I wanted to get into this part to describe how crazy it is that he can do that.
Right.
So
okay,
I'm going to go back to an example that I played earlier. This is Los Muñequitos de Matanzas, which is the group that Sandy talked about going to rehearsal every day with his mom. She's the singer in the group.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is the song Congo Yabumba. So I want to just focus on a couple of, I'll stop it eventually, and we can talk about like the interaction between the drums.
Okay.
Yo me enteré que tú andas diciendo que eres un palo, mi amigo Julián. Yo me enteré que tú andas diciendo que eres un palo, mi amigo Julián. Tú debes decir, si no fuera por papá, tú debes decir, si no fuera por papá. Y ahora veo que todo lo tuyo es un vano orgullo, mi amigo Julián. Y ahora veo que todo lo tuyo es un vano orgullo, mi amigo Julián. Agárralo bien. Tú debes decir, si no fuera por papá.
All right, let's just pause on this one moment here, just for a second. So,
Okay.
If you can hear the three parts, the drums that are playing. So the low drum is playing on. If you think about the clave in two measures, 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3 4, like that. The lowest drum is playing on beat 4 in both measures. And then this middle drum is playing on beat 1 in the second measure only. So boom, boom.
Okay.
The quinto drum, the basic pattern is this very syncopated pattern, which is something like this. 1 2 3 4, get it, go, ging. Something like that. But it can.
And that's on one drum?
Yeah. Like
okay.
between.
slaps and
like this. That's kind
Okay.
of like the basic pattern, but like that's almost never heard explicitly because that's the drum that is improvising the most. But that's what they're riffing off of for the most part. Okay, so this little pattern, I just want this passage, let's say.
Lo tuyo es un vago orgullo, mi amigo Julián.
Okay, so they say
there's a ton of yeah. Go ahead. Please.
So when they say mi amigo Julián, that's the downbeat. The last note there is the downbeat of clave. Mi amigo Julián. So okay, so
Okay.
I can actually slow this down, which I'll do that now. So you can hear. Oftentimes what happens in these spaces between the vocal phrases is that the drums can have a little conversation. So so it happens really quickly, but like just in that first, that's the lowest drum playing a muff tone, which sounds higher, going into the downbeat. And then the quinto player immediately responds with like a similar pattern. And
yeah.
So like
I mean
they and none of the patterns ever touch each other, even in their improvisations. Like in that part, they're all kind of like having a little moment to say a little thing, but they do it in such a way where they don't ever step on each other's toes. So there's always this melody between the drums, even as it fluctuates. And even though the quinto is the most improv drum, like the other drums are also improvising.
Right. Was the segundo in on that at all right there? Or?
So the segundo doesn't improvise there.
Okay.
So it's just it's just ding. It's in like kind of the one ear here. It's if you're having trouble hear it. The low drum is more in the center. You can hear the middle drum change when they go to this chordo part where everyone's singing together. You can hear the middle drum changing his part to kind of raise the intensity a little bit.
It's more syncopated.
So instead of playing just 1, 2, ding, ding, when they go into that part, you can hear him change to ding, 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 ding. Here, listen again.
Yeah.
So yeah. So that's a little bit about the improvisation in rumba.
That's cool. And so quinto, segundo, and conga are 3 different players, right?
Yeah, so the quinto is the highest drum.
Yeah.
And the segundo, tres dos is the middle drum. The conga, the tumbadora, salidor is the lower drum. Different names for the same thing.
So if a segunda has a part that's like, is it that's all they're doing, or is there other like fill in the blanks type things?
Play it. So there's like a lot of ways to play this part. So let me just play a couple for you.
Okay.
Here. move my camera so you can see it, even though our listeners won't be able to.
All right, cool.
All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, wait. So this is. I'll play a very old school simple part first. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay.
Okay.
Here's a more modern way to play the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then there's like this is a Matanza style part. So this is Havana style, the same part. 1,
Okay.
2, 3. Wait, sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4. So, yeah, there's many more ways to play it too. So,
Man, that's so cool.
in
In your experience, what style is like roughest on the hands, man? Like would you say
roughest on the hands?
like what have you had to build up the most like calluses and everything to learn? Like rumba
Well,
or
playing
bata?
cajones for sure.
Okay.
Just
Just
that
smacking
instrument
wooden
is
boxes.
just a cajon is a box. So it's a wooden box. Sometimes they have nails sticking out a little bit.
Whoops.
Yeah, can be rough. And if you get too excited, you can really injure your fingers, honestly, if you're not careful.
I think I've done something like that before. That's just like they your hands
Yeah.
like fill up with blood after a while of playing, and then like you're just going for it. You're with the music, and kind of backing off doesn't always seem to be an possibility at the time.
Yeah, that is a tricky thing that just you kind of get better at. Well, obviously, and also your hands change over time. Like I have kind of pudgy hands from all of the hand drumming I do, and it's like it's just like a feature of a practice. Like people that play violin have like a thing on their neck.
Yeah.
It's like
I have weird little
yes,
calluses on the inside of my fingers.
yes, exactly. All this.
Vebs.
Okay, so cool. I have more stuff. I went ahead and did a breakdown of one of the first things that we heard in Sandy's interview. So we played this track, Caridad by Afrocuban de Matanzas. And so I just wanted to kind of explain, because he just tells us what he's doing, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's cool. And I just want to explain like what it is and why it's cool, just for one of them at least.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. So, okay. So what he said was that it's both styles of Yesa together. So at the end of this song, when the Yesa parts come in, so it starts with a rhythm that I was like, what is this called? And he said it's called Osine. It's typically a rhythm that's played for the Orisha Osine. And then at the end of the rumba, when the coro comes in, everything switches. The bata switches to playing Yesa on the bata. But then also the Yesa drums come in. So if you recall, bata drums are distinct from Yesa, but part of the same religion, part of the same religious practice. So it's what it really is that the Yesa rhythms are adapted for the bata. So someone made these inventions on the bata to be able to play the Yesa songs, which are in the same religion. So it's so the rhythms are pretty they're very different, which is why when you put them together on top of each other, like Sandy did, it gets really interesting. So,
Okay. Yeah, I remember this, and I think we played that example twice, actually. I don't remember clearly, though, but, my ears weren't able to pick up the exact moment, but, you, Toby, and Sandy all were just like, yeah, that's it right there. And I was like, okay, something happened.
That might have been the Yamaya Paulo thing.
Okay.
Which is it? I'm not going to get into that one, but
all right. Well, let's get into this one then.
Okay, so another story that Sandy told me once, but we didn't cover in the interview about that specific recording and that specific day that they made that recording, which is that, if you recall, was that day in New York with Josh Jones.
Yep.
Where, so he said it was super hot in the studio, so all of the heads on the drums went down. So it's hard to hear what's being played because the tones aren't that clear. They're all kind of muddy.
Okay. Interesting.
So, I recorded basically, so I've recorded some parts here. So I have, this first is Yesa on the Yesa drum. So if you recall, Yesa has 4 drums, Bata has 3 drums. So Yesa drums are played with sticks, except for one drum is played with 2 hands. And then there are 2 bell parts. So the way that this example goes, I should say, also, like, one kind of thing that's unique about Yesa is, like, normally it's the highest or lowest drum that is the lead or improvising drum. In the case of Yesa, it's like not exact. It's like the second to lowest drum.
Huh.
So, so the way I do it is, like, one bell part comes in for 4 measures. Next bell part comes in for 4 measures. High drum comes in for 4 measures. The second highest drum comes in for 4 measures.
Okay.
The very lowest drum comes in for 4 measures. And then the leader drum comes in at the end. So.
Okay.
So I'll just play that.
That makes sense.
So that's Yesa on the Yesa drums. Okay.
Cool.
Now I have 2 examples that are in the Bata. And I didn't do the same thing where I broke down the parts, but I did put the clave. So Bata has 3 drums. There's Onkonkolo, the highest drum, Itotole, the middle drum, and Iya, the lowest drum.
Yeah.
So we're translating 4 drum parts to 3 drum parts. So things get a little funky. It's not very much it's not very similar, to be honest with you. But so I have 2 different examples. One is the Matanza style, and the other is the Havana style, and they're actually very different in my opinion. So here's Matanza style. Okay. So just to recap what's similar, so the kind of middle drum playing on the off beats there, where it's like one ding ding 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4, that's going to be common for all of these examples. Well, kind of. So it's common between the Matanza style bata and the Yesa drum style. The highest drum is like on a even just different part of the beat. It's more similar to the bell pattern than it is to the highest drum part. It's a little strange. And then the leader drum is actually more similar to the lowest drum versus the second to lowest drum, which is the leader drum. And then in Matanzas, you can kind of you can go back and forth between playing those two parts almost.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so now here's the Havana style, and honestly, the groove in the Havana style is just completely different. Like the Unconcolo part is highly syncopated, and the Ia and the Itotele, the two lower drums, have notes that are just like not even in the Yesa part at all.
Weird. Okay.
So yeah. So
yeah, that feels different for sure.
yes.
Big time, man.
Let me grab the actual song real quick.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, my theory is here, although I should ask Sandy to confirm this, but I think they're playing the Havana style with the Havana style on the bata mixed with the Yesa drum parts. And
Okay.
I think what that gives you is more kind of notes in the measure and less of people stepping on each other's toes.
Okay. Wow.
And this is what my two recordings sound to, if I put the Havana style and the Yesa drums together, this is what it sounds like.
Okay.
So let's just real quick jump to the song from Afrocuban de Matanzas and listen to that. So I'll jump right into where they transition to Yesa parts. I don't quite understand. It's like dun 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 dun. That's definitely like an EA part, but like in the Havana style. So it's the low drum part that's like pretty prominent there.
Right.
So yeah, it's kind of interesting. But
it's extremely interesting, and like to to hear it broken down like that is really, really helpful. So thank you.
Yeah, I like
you know, and I think that folks are gonna be able to get a lot from that, and then listening to Sandy, you know, that's
yeah,
huge.
like and this. So the reason why I chose that song in the interview is because like this was Sandy's idea, and like Sandy's whole thing is like constantly. Even when I was taking lessons with him, he's like, okay, you play the abacua middle drum, and you play palo caja, and like I'll play quinto, and like that, and then you sing a song for Ochun. Like that was like, I mean, it wasn't always like that crazy, but it was always something like that constantly, and it didn't like that. That was just like his thing that he was always trying to accomplish. It's like this sort of cross of the genres and finding where it works, and because it's all about finding the space for like these drums can speak together these ways, and like he would very frequently, like if we were playing Columbia, he'd be always like play the palo like caja part, and someone play the segundo Columbia part, and then quinto, like normal Columbia quinto part.
Yeah.
And that would almost be like the default way to do it with him. Like
because he just found that the space worked well and the melodies came out in a cool way.
Yeah.
Where all the drums, that's really fascinating. So his knowledge of all the traditions were deep enough, and he is definitely somewhat of a genius in his own right, where he's
it's honestly, it's hard to describe how crazy Sandy is of a player. Like there are a lot of people that are really, really incredibly talented people. Like really talented, amazing. This world is full of amazing drummers. Sandy is like on some other level, like that I just can't describe. And so this great, while we're praising Sandy, let me tell that story. A related story, like, because he overdubbed his album, but one time I recorded him overdubbing in that same style, and because he was trying to, I forget why we were doing this, but he had some idea that he wanted to get out, and so you know, a lot of the if I was to do this myself, like functionally, I would want to put the songs first with the clave. So you have a sense of tempo, and you know the songs, you know like where the songs are going, so you can kind of structure it that way. And then the improvising drums can kind of like sit on top of that, or you know, you can put them in afterwards. The way that he chose to do it was like, I'm going to play the caja, the improvising drum first. And then literally the next part was quinto, like another improvising, and he was like, I want to have an improvising bell pattern, and then like the very, very last thing was like the clave, and then we'll sing the songs after that. It was crazy, and it was like, this was like 6 minutes long of him, and he's like,
so do you think he was holding the form in his head?
Anything, no click. This was all done with no click. So it's just like him sitting there, like the first track was just him improvising on the drum. And I'm like with no headphones on, just like going for it. And if you've heard Sandy go for it, you know, it can get pretty wild, right? It's like, it's like, and the tempo is even fluctuating. Like he's pushing the tempo the whole time. So it's like, it was crazy to see him do that. Like I'm sitting there and I'm like, this isn't going to work. There's no way. Like,
you must have been sweating a little bit for him.
Well, I was like, okay, we'll see where this goes. Like, I mean, I'm not worried about it, you know, but it's like, let's see where this goes. I want to see what happens. And then it was just crazy to be like, his next impulse wasn't to like lay down the groove. Then it was like, no, another improvising part to go in between those improvising phrases, you know.
I'm doubling down.
It was like,
you know what I mean?
This is the comparison. This was like, so it's like, BB King gets into the studio and is like, I'm going to start with like the little licks in between the vocal parts That's the first track.
The fills.
Yeah, and then after
with no
that,
drums, no bass, anything else.
And then
It's
and then
just
the next
fills.
part will be like piano comping, like just to kind of, or like an organ, like a B3 or something, like, and then maybe I'll do like a little guitar, rhythm guitar, and then we'll do the bass and drums, and then we'll sing the songs on top of it. Like that was the order of operations.
We should make a track like that.
But it came together. I don't think that he's happy with it, so I'm not going to play it or release it, but
Sure.
like it came together. I mean, it came together. If it were my track, I would release it because I was like, holy crap, this is amazing. But you know,
Yeah.
he's capable of such crazy feats of musicianship that like defy logic.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and yeah, the videos that I've seen, yeah, we should post some of those up.
I have
like, in the notes.
We'll talk about
just
this
ridiculous.
off the recording, but I have a
Sure.
bunch of videos, actually.
Yeah. Well, yeah. All right. Well, right on, man. And thank you for putting all this together and being pod teacher.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, totally.
So I think
It was
that's
extremely helpful for me. You know.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Well, does that feel good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Sweet, man. I feel like that's a lot. And if people listen to this in conjunction with Sandy, the interview, then
it'll
I
make
hope
more
that-
sense, I think, because we gloss over a lot of this stuff.
I mean, it makes that talk make more sense to me.
Yeah.
But awesome. Well, thank you everyone for listening. And thank you, Bob, for being our esteemed guest today.
My pleasure. Find us on Twitter at tones_4. Find us on
Mhm.
Instagram. What's our thing?
Hang on. This happens. I'm usually ready for this these days, and I'm just writing the word fantastic into my browser, so that's not helping. Hang on. Good Lord. Fantastic Tones #4 Human Bones. So Fantastic
really?
Tones, the #4 Human Bones. Or FT4HB.
Yeah.
FT, the #4HB. That's right. Sorry. Cool. And you can find us on Patreon, of course, at Fantastic Tones for Human Bones. And we have some very cool things in the works. Some nice, some episodes I'm really excited about releasing coming up soon.
We have a lot of work to do. So stick around for the next episode.
Yeah, totally. I have to learn a new kind of guitar to get ready for the next helper episode. But we'll do it soon.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yes. All right. So long, audience. So long, audience.
All right.